My name is John, and I'm 52 years old. My wife Serena is 47 but looks much younger. She's a stunning woman, tall, with long black hair and pale skin, and she maintains her figure by working out and eating healthily. We've been married for 24 years, and our 25th anniversary is just a month away. We have 2 sons, Michael and Ben, both married and starting families of their own. Thankfully, they've stayed nearby, so we see them often. I work for a pharmaceutical manufacturer in New Jersey that produces both ethical drugs and generics. We're one of the largest manufacturers on the East Coast, and the FDA keeps a close eye on us. Recently, an FDA inspector found some discrepancies in our paperwork, which has led to more frequent audits. As the VP of Compliance, I've been working long hours and traveling to our warehouse twice a month to ensure everything's in order. It's exhausting work, but I've been training 3 additional compliance technicians to help lighten the load. The stress was beginning to affect my personal life, but we were on the brink of recertification, so I kept pushing through. I had a secret plan to retire as soon as my team was fully trained and the recertification process was either complete or well underway. I wanted to surprise Serena with the news by our anniversary. One day, I managed to carve out some time for myself and headed downtown in search of a jeweler. I had something special in mind for our silver anniversary, a gift that would show how much she meant to me. After some searching, I found a quaint jewelry shop tucked away in an alley. A friend had recommended it after he had a special locket made for his wife. I walked in and met the owner, a Pakistani man who had immigrated here over 15 years ago. His English was impeccable, and he was friendly and welcoming. I explained that I had a 1.5-carat diamond ring that I no longer wore and wanted to have the stone reset into a necklace for Serena. She had always admired that diamond. He examined the stone, making appreciative noises, then pulled out several settings in white gold and sterling silver for me to choose from. I selected a stunning design with 3 smaller diamonds surrounding the larger center stone. It was breathtaking. We settled on a price, and I handed him the ring. He took a picture of it for security and promised it would be ready in about 2 weeks. Perfect. As I stepped back out onto the main street, I caught sight of Serena coming out of a hotel lobby. Panic surged through me. I ducked back into the alley, hoping she wouldn't see me. I watched as she hailed a cab, confused since I had no idea why she was downtown or what she was doing at the hotel. Then, to my shock, Bill emerged from the hotel and walked up to her. They exchanged a few words, and I saw her laugh before she climbed into the cab and left. A knot tightened in my stomach. What was going on? Why was she meeting Bill? I shook my head, trying to dismiss the unsettling thoughts. Maybe it was just a friendly meeting, I told myself. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As the days passed, I found it increasingly difficult to focus on my work or on the upcoming anniversary. My mind kept drifting back to that moment. I wanted to believe in Serena's love and our life together, but doubt was creeping in. I couldn't let this get in the way of my plans for our special anniversary surprise, but the more I thought about it, the harder it became to push aside the nagging feelings of insecurity. I kept telling myself I would confront her once the necklace was ready. I wanted to believe in the future we had built together, but the seeds of doubt had been planted, and I knew I needed to address them. Would the anniversary celebration bring us closer, or would it reveal hidden truths that would change everything? Bill walked away, leaving me with a whirlwind of thoughts. He was a close friend, someone I'd met when I first joined the company, and he had been our realtor when we bought our house. Over the years, we became friends, sharing countless dinners with him and his wife, Sally. We had known them for just over 10 years and even took a few trips together, but lately, life had gotten hectic with my job, and I wondered about the interaction I'd just witnessed. Perhaps Caitlin was planning something special for our anniversary, and Bill was in on it. Still, the image of them at the hotel nagged at me. I decided to wait and see how everything unfolded, planning to ask Serena some questions tonight and gauge her response. Serena and I lived in a beautiful 2-story colonial house in a nice part of town. I had done well in my career, earning a comfortable salary, and after inheriting a substantial sum from my parents, it had grown to almost double with the help of my investment counselor. We agreed to leave that money untouched until my retirement, which I was beginning to consider since our 2 children had graduated from college and moved out, leaving us in a house that felt too big for just the 2 of us. Yet we loved it and cherished our time there. Walking into the kitchen from the garage, I set my briefcase down, shedding my jacket and tie before hanging them in the hallway. As I entered what we called the library, though, it had more decorative books than anything else. I found Serena waiting for me, as she always did. We greeted each other, and she asked how my day went. "It was productive," I replied, trying to keep things light. "I finished up everything for my upcoming trip to the warehouse." She nodded, saying she had spent the day cleaning and tidying up at home. My ears perked up at her comment about staying home all day. Why would she mention that when she'd been downtown around lunchtime? Serena wasn't very good at lying, so I decided to push a little and see how she reacted. "Have you seen Bill lately? I need to ask him something about a question he had regarding some supplies." "I thought he might come by," I said casually. She hesitated before answering, "I haven't seen him since we were at their place last week." The lies were beginning to stack up, and if she kept this up, I knew she would slip up eventually, but I didn't want to push too hard. The anxiety of my suspicions was eating away at me. It had been over 6 months since Serena and I had been intimate. I had tried to initiate things several times lately, but she always turned me down, offering excuses like she wasn't in the mood or had a headache. The last time had been Sunday night, and I hadn't wanted to discuss it for fear of upsetting her. Now, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper going on. "Why don't we invite Bill and Sally over for dinner this week?" I suggested, hoping to gauge her response. "I don't think I want to have dinner this week," she replied, sounding uneasy. "Maybe we can plan for next week instead." I knew I had a trip next week, and I hated to plan anything for that time. "Can we do it this week instead?" "I'd rather not wait," I pressed, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "Is there some kind of disagreement between you and Bill that I don't know about?" I asked, noticing how uncomfortable she seemed whenever I mentioned his name. Her discomfort was palpable. She stood up abruptly, mumbling something about needing to go to the bathroom before leaving the room. As the door closed behind her, I felt a mix of confusion and dread. I had to find out what was really going on. I weighed her reactions and the answers she gave to my questions, and I knew without a doubt that she was hiding something that likely involved Bill. I decided not to push her any further. When she returned to the room, I asked if she had thought about our anniversary next month. I suggested we host a party at the house, inviting our friends Bill and Sally, Justin and Fist, along with the kids and their spouses. We could have it catered, so it wouldn't be a hassle for us. She shrugged and admitted she hadn't given it any thought yet, so she didn't know if that was what she wanted to do. I mentioned that I thought it could be fun, especially since we hadn't been enjoying ourselves lately. "What do you mean?" she asked, her brows furrowing in confusion. I explained that between my work and trips every other week, we hadn't had much time to unwind. I then broached the topic of our love life. "I haven't been too tired for that," I said, trying to keep my tone light, "but it seems like you haven't been in the mood for the past 6 months. What's going on?" She snapped back that she hadn't been feeling well, and I knew that, but I also felt like it was me who wasn't in the mood. Her anger simmered beneath the surface, not because of my bluntness, but because I was right and she wasn't about to tell me why. "Look, I'm sorry," I said, trying to diffuse the tension. "I'll back off. I guess you have your reasons, even if I don't know what they are. I'll handle all the plans for our anniversary dinner next month. Just relax and let me take care of it." I apologized again for the comment about our intimacy and told her I'd wait for her to open up when she was ready. With that, I got up and left the room, heading to my study. I turned on the television, but there was nothing good to watch. I needed time to figure out my next steps. I decided my trip next week would be crucial. She and Bill would likely be too cautious to act while I was home, especially now that she knew I was suspicious. But I had a feeling she couldn't be completely certain I didn't know anything. The next day, Thursday, I went into work and made a call to a friend in the electronics industry. We had collaborated on a few projects, and I felt comfortable confiding in him. I explained my situation and what I needed. He guided me on what to buy, and I called the supply store he recommended to place my order. By that afternoon, everything had been delivered to my office, thankfully. Having well-connected friends had its perks. My plan was straightforward. I had 10 tiny voice-activated bugs designed to be discreet and easy to plant. I also had 2 receivers. One was a single-channel battery-operated device with a range of up to a mile, and the other had a shorter range of just under 300 feet. The short-range one would go inside the house to monitor the bug zone in each room, except for one. That one would slip into her purse, and the receiver would be stashed in her car. This way I could pick up conversations wherever she went, as long as she had her purse with her. The receiver in the trunk would record up to 5 hours of audio from as far away as a mile. That evening, while she was out shopping, I planted the bugs throughout the house and set up the recorder in the basement workshop. I turned on the radio in the spare bedroom to mask any sounds, then went downstairs to listen. Everything was working perfectly. I knew I'd have to wait until she went to bed to plant the one in her car and her purse, but luck was on my side. She fell asleep early on the couch. I took the chance, carefully gluing the bug into her purse right there and then. Next, I went to her car, set up the recorder in the trunk, and did another test. All systems were go. Now, I was ready. Friday dragged on, feeling like it would never end. I was desperate to know what was happening inside the house, but I knew I had to wait until after dinner to find out. A part of me was torn about what I might hear. On one hand, I hoped there would be nothing on the tape. I wanted my life to stay the same dull and boring but safe, with a wife who remained faithful to me and our marriage. On the other hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were not as they seemed, and that maybe, just maybe, she was cheating on me. This thought gnawed at me. Why would she cheat? Why had she suddenly pulled back from our love life? What was the issue? I found myself wondering why she hadn't come to me to talk about our problems. After 25 years of marriage, I believed we had a solid relationship. The first 24 years had been filled with love and happiness. What had changed? Maybe nothing had changed, and I had simply been oblivious to her actions. I ruminated over this all afternoon, but I couldn't find any answers. When dinner rolled around, the conversation between us felt strained and non-existent. We skipped our usual, "How was your day?" chat. Caitlin was moody, seemingly lost in her own world, while I was on edge, anticipating what I would find later. The evening dragged on with only the bare minimum of exchanges. Finally, she announced she was going to bed early and headed upstairs. I waited about an hour, my heart racing, before quietly following her up to check on her. The soft rise and fall of her breathing told me she was asleep. I turned and went back downstairs to the workshop. There, I glanced at the recorder and saw that it had captured something. My heart raced as I rewound it and pressed play. The first sound I heard was the clear ring of a phone, confirming the recorder was working perfectly. I heard Serena's voice answer, and from there, I could only hear her side of the conversation, but it was enough for me to fill in the gaps. "Hello? Why are you calling me now? What do you want?" "No, you know I can't meet today or tomorrow. I won't do anything until he goes out of town." "Yes, same time and place. Goodbye." After that, the recording faded into silence, except for a later call from one of our kids that Serena answered. No more calls came that afternoon, and she didn't leave the house, so I didn't need to check the car recorder or anything else. I spent the weekend keeping my distance from her, a heavy anger simmering deep within me. I needed space. I couldn't bear to confront her just yet. I was certain she would meet Bill again, and despite the pain that brought me, I needed to gather more evidence. I had enough to know what was happening, but I needed more to convince a lawyer. I decided to wait until after our anniversary party to confront her. I had a plan to make this anniversary special, perhaps the last one we'd share. That Wednesday morning I told her I had postponed my trip and would be traveling the following week instead. It would be a short trip, I assured her, leaving late in the morning and returning by dinner. I mentioned wanting to prepare for the party, and she smiled at me, excitedly saying she was looking forward to it. After an hour, she finally picked up the phone to call Bill. I didn't bother to eavesdrop since I knew it was being recorded. I imagined they made plans for another meeting. The day went surprisingly well. I found myself in a good mood, even singing a little. It was strange to feel this way, especially knowing it might be the end of my marriage. Why did I feel good about that? That thought chilled my excitement, and the pain returned, more intense than before. I was left wondering what I was going to do next. I descended into the basement, my heart racing as I rewound the tape from that day. Pressing play, I heard Serena's voice, soft yet filled with a tension I couldn't ignore. She was on the phone with her lover, Bill. "Hello," she said, her tone a mix of excitement and caution. "He just told me he's changing his schedule for next Wednesday. He'll be leaving later and coming home earlier. We can still meet at lunchtime, but I need to be back in case he gets home sooner than planned." I don't know why he changed it. He didn't say much, just that he has some things to take care of for the anniversary party. I don't think he knows anything. If he did, he would definitely tell me. But I meant it when I said we need to end this. He might not be traveling as much anymore. We'll have to talk later." The rest of the conversation faded into mundane exchanges, nothing worth keeping. With a heavy heart, I erased it, resetting the tape to 0. Serena was ready to end things, but by then it felt like the damage was already done. I felt the familiar ache returning as I made my way back upstairs. I would continue to listen and figure out my next move. For the next 2 weeks, I stuck to my plan. Serena and Bill kept their lunch date the following Wednesday. I was anxious, waiting for the moment I could uncover more. When I came home and found her setting the table for dinner, I headed out to her car, retrieving the recorder from the trunk. I took it downstairs, checking the counter to see there was still 2 hours of tape left. I was sure it would be revealing. After dinner, I told her I was working on some things downstairs and would only be about an hour. She nodded, accustomed to my routine of retreating to the basement. While she settled down for her usual evening knitting, I listened to the tape, and what I heard sent a chill through me. For an hour, I was drawn into their world, Bill and Serena lost in each other, their voices mixing in a way that made my stomach churn. At first, I was captivated, but soon it became painfully clear that what I was listening to was dull and unimaginative. Their intimacy felt so shallow compared to what we used to share. At times, I could hear Serena's hesitance. It was as if she were just going through the motions with Bill. The sounds of their bodies moving together made my heart grow heavier, each creak of the bed echoing my own heartbreak. After nearly half an hour, I turned off the recorder, rewinding the tape to ensure I saved everything. I made a copy, stashing one in my safe downstairs and slipping the other into my briefcase. I planned to extract key snippets for later use, to create a demonstration that would lay everything bare. Returning upstairs, I tried to act normal, but every moment spent in the same room with her felt unbearable. I glanced at Serena several times, but she looked perfectly fine, as if the weight of her betrayal hadn't affected her at all. I wondered if she was so accustomed to lying that she felt no guilt when we were together. 3 days before the anniversary party, something unexpected happened. As I listened to the tapes that evening, I heard the doorbell ring. Bill had come over. I caught snippets of their conversation, Serena keeping him at the door, her voice rising in agitation. "No, not here, not in my home. We're done," she yelled, the tension palpable. Their argument escalated, and I could hear Bill pressing for more while she firmly rejected him. Finally, I heard the door slam and Serena storm back into the house, cursing under her breath. It seemed that even as she tried to assert control, the lines between their affair were blurring, and she was caught in a web of her own making. With each passing day, I felt my world crumbling further. I was determined to confront the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I reached out to my lawyer and made sure the divorce papers were ready. I kept my distance from Serena, speaking only when necessary and trying to avoid being alone with her. A week before the anniversary party, she finally noticed my silence. "You haven't said much to me lately," she said, concern evident in her voice. "Is something bothering you? Did I do something to upset you?" I hesitated, unsure of how to answer. "I don't know," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "Do you think you've done something to make me mad?" "Of course not," she said, a hint of confusion in her eyes. "Why would you think that?" I sighed, remembering the conversations we'd had, or rather, the ones that had been shut down. I mentioned that we had some problems, but whenever I try to talk about them, you just get angry and yell. It feels like that's your go-to response. I just hope you haven't done something foolish to get back at me. She opened her mouth to respond, but couldn't find the words. Instead, tears filled her eyes and she broke down. "I'm sorry if I made you cry," I said softly, my heart aching. "I just needed to let off some steam. I know you wouldn't hurt me intentionally. I trust you with everything I have." She wiped her eyes and looked at me, sadness written all over her face. Silence settled between us, and after a moment, she quietly retreated to the kitchen, leaving the conversation unresolved. The tension lingered, and we spoke little after that. The anniversary party was planned for Friday night, the day before our actual anniversary. It was the best day for most of our friends and our kids. The catering was handled, so we just needed to focus on getting dressed. About an hour before the party, as we were in our master bedroom, I decided it was time to stop avoiding her. I asked if she planned to wear the beautiful blue dress I had bought her the year before. "You look stunning in it," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "It really shows off all your charms." She smiled at the compliment, recalling how excited she had been when I bought the dress after she admired it in a shop window. "I'll wear it," she said a bit shyly. "I think it's perfect for our anniversary." "What about you?" she asked, curious about my outfit. "Just a shirt and tie with a sports jacket," I replied. "I don't want to distract anyone from how gorgeous you'll look." For the first time in a while, she blushed and smiled, and I felt a flicker of hope. I wanted her to enjoy the anniversary, to create memories that would last long after this night. By 6:45, we were both dressed and ready. As I looked at her in that blue dress, my breath caught in my throat. Tears welled up in my eyes as I took in her beauty. I had loved this woman for nearly all my adult life, and the thought of losing her felt unbearable. I had to sit down for a moment to steady myself. I wanted to give her my gift now, to create wonderful memories for her to cherish. Before we head down to greet our guests, I said, "I want to give you your present now. I want you to have it for the party." I walked to the dresser and pulled out the elegant gold box the jeweler had given me. As I approached her, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. I gently moved behind her and fastened the necklace around her neck. She turned to the mirror, and her eyes widened in delight. "It's absolutely beautiful," she exclaimed, turning back to me. "Thank you so much. I love it, and I'll treasure it forever." In that moment, despite everything that was looming between us, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this anniversary would remind us of the love we once shared and reignite the spark that had dimmed over time. As she turned to show me her appreciation, moving in for a kiss of thanks, I felt a rush of emotions. We shared that fleeting moment before heading downstairs, but my mind was clouded with thoughts of what I had just confided in her. It was true I loved her, and that was the painful truth I had grappled with for weeks. Despite my feelings, I couldn't shake off the hurt from her betrayal, the way she had turned away from our marriage vows and confided in another man. That man was someone I had trusted and respected, someone I would have gone out of my way for. The betrayal from two of the people I cared about most cut deep, leaving me breathless each time it crossed my mind. But listening to the tape of their afternoon together gave me the strength I needed to carry out my plans for the evening. Everything was set, the caterer was ready, and we were expecting 8 guests, including our 2 children, Bill and his wife, Sally, and another couple we often spent time with. As luck would have it, Bill and Sally were the first to arrive. I shook hands with Bill while Sally embraced Serena, both of them bubbling with enthusiasm. These were 2 of our oldest friends, and this evening was supposed to be a celebration. Yet deep down, I felt far from celebratory. Bill congratulated me, saying I had the best of everything, a beautiful home, wonderful children, and a gorgeous wife. "What more could you ask for?" he joked. I simply thanked him and mentioned that Serena and I had enjoyed 25 great years together. "But things aren't always what they seem," I added, and I could tell Bill understood the weight of my words. Turning to Sally, I held out my arms for a hug. She had been cute once, but the years had taken their toll. She had grown heavier and more typical of a suburban housewife. "Congratulations! Here's to many more happy years," she said warmly. I replied, "I wish I could count on more years together, but that may not be in the cards." I spoke softly, just loud enough for her to hear. She looked surprised, but I gestured for her to keep it between us. Taking Bill by the hand, Sally led him toward the bar for drinks. As they walked away, I turned to Serena, who was looking at me with curiosity. "What did you say to her?" she asked, concern etching her features. "Just enjoy the party," I replied. "We'll have time to talk later. I want to soak in this moment, our 25th anniversary, and the wonderful years we've shared." Just then, the doorbell rang, announcing the next guests. Our son Michael and his wife Julie entered, followed by Justin and Phyllis, and our other son Ben with his wife Carrie. We were soon swept up in a wave of congratulations, the atmosphere buzzing with joy. Before long, things became chaotic, and Serena and I were pulled in different directions to mingle with the guests, exchanging pleasantries and reliving memories. The evening flew by, and dinner was a grand affair, beautifully catered and expertly served. Everything was perfect except for the tension hanging over 3 of us. Throughout the night, I kept an eye on Bill and Serena. They seemed to orbit each other, unable to find a moment alone to talk. Then I saw her finally grab his elbow, drawing him into a quiet corner. I watched as she spoke earnestly to him, her expression serious. My heart raced as I tried to read the situation from across the room. What were they discussing? The evening continued around me, laughter echoing in the air, but I felt a growing sense of unease. The celebration was meant to honor our love, yet here I was, caught in a web of deception and heartbreak. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I had a plan, and soon everything would come to light. He wore a huge smile that quickly faded as he caught my gaze. I could see him listening to something, glancing up just in time to find me watching him. I held his stare for a moment before looking away. After that, I lost track of the conversation as my son Michael nudged me to discuss our plans. I kept my responses vague, saying we hadn't made any solid arrangements yet. I focused on chatting with Justin, Fist, and my sons, along with their wives, trying to keep the atmosphere light until dinner was announced. Once it was time, I hung back until Bill and Serena had both settled in. The seating had already been arranged, with my daughters-in-law on either side of me and our sons surrounding Serena. The dinner itself was lovely, filled with laughter and conversation. When dinner wrapped up, I stood to propose a toast to friends and family. I had carefully planned my words for this moment. I tapped my knife against my wine glass to get everyone's attention. As all eyes turned toward me, I took a deep breath. "I just want to thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate this special occasion," I began, raising my glass for everyone to see. "Here's to each of you for making this gathering memorable. And now, I'd like to raise a special toast to my beautiful wife, Serena." As everyone turned to face her, their backs were to me. I intentionally set my glass down without taking a sip, knowing only Serena could see the gesture. After dinner, as people settled into the family room to chat over dessert, Bill approached me, looking concerned. "Hey, I don't know what's bothering you, but both Sally and Serena have asked me what's up with you," he said. I shrugged it off, replying, "Nothing's wrong. Why do they think something's up?" He frowned slightly. "You've seemed a bit off tonight. If something's bothering you, I'd like to talk about it. Maybe I can help." I sighed, realizing I could use his advice. "Actually, there is something I could use your help with. If you and Sally are free tomorrow morning around 8:30, I'd love for you both to come over for breakfast. I could really use Sally's input too. It's important, and I promise it's job-related." He agreed, but wanted a hint. "Just give me a little something to work with, and I can keep a secret." I shook my head. "No hints tonight. It's a surprise, and I'd rather tell everyone at once, even Serena. Let's keep this under wraps for now." He finally relented, realizing I wasn't going to say anything more. I clapped him on the back and walked over to talk with Ben. I noticed Bill talking to Sally, then to Serena. They seemed to think I had some exciting news about work, which seemed to put Serena at ease. As the evening wore on and the party began to wind down, I circulated the room, thanking everyone and saying good night. I felt a sense of relief that the night was coming to an end. It had been painful from the start, a reminder of a life that felt increasingly distant. Bill and Sally were the first to leave, followed by Justin and Fist, and then Michael and Julie. My youngest son, Ben, and his wife, Carrie, were the last to go. They chatted with Serena for a moment before heading out. Just before they left, Sally approached me. "If you want to talk before tomorrow, please call me," she said, her voice soft. "If there's a problem, I'm here to help." She wrapped her arms around me in a hug, while Bill stood silently nearby, observing. I thanked her and assured her I'd reach out if I needed to talk. "I'll see you both tomorrow," I said, as she nodded and left. Her simple statement of concern struck me harder than anything else that night, adding to the weight I was already carrying. Bill and Serena were caught in a web of lies, and the fallout from affairs always seemed to hit the innocent hardest. I had arranged for the caterers to clear out any leftover food and return the next morning at 10 to clean up. As I stepped into the kitchen, I looked for Serena, but didn't see her anywhere. When I inquired about her, I was told she had said goodnight and gone upstairs. After a few more minutes, I watched the caterers leave and turned off the lights. I had some things to tidy up in the den before heading upstairs. As I walked into our bedroom, I found Serena still dressed, sitting in one of the two chairs that made up our little sitting area. I sank heavily into the other chair, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Looking at her, I felt nothing but an overwhelming wave of pain, no anger, no desire for revenge, just a deep, crushing hurt. With great effort, I managed to smile and said, "I thought the evening went well." She smiled back, but I could see the concern etched on her face. "Can I ask you something about the party?" she said, her voice hesitant. I nodded, telling her that she was always free to speak her mind, and that a husband and wife shouldn't keep secrets from one another. "Why did you set your drink down when you made your toast to me?" she asked, her brow furrowed in worry. I shrugged, unsure, and asked what she thought. She admitted she didn't know, and I could sense the unease in her tone. Have I displeased you in some way? Once again I replied that I didn't know, but I probed further, asking if there was something she had done that might anger me. She shook her head, insisting she hadn't done anything wrong. Frustration bubbled up inside me and I said, I'm sorry, but I find it hard to believe you. I think we have some serious problems in our marriage, but I'm too tired to discuss them tonight. I'm going to sleep in the guest room, and we can talk tomorrow. I stood up and walked down the hall to the guest room, fighting to maintain my composure. I had never slept in that room in all the years we had lived here, nor had I ever locked my wife out of our bed. The pain of doing that almost overwhelmed me. I checked my briefcase for the items I would need the next day, relieved to find everything was there. I undressed, turned off the lights, and lay on the bed, fully aware that sleep would be elusive that night. About an hour later, I heard a soft knock on the door, followed by Serena's voice asking if she could come in. I stayed silent, letting the tension hang in the air. Eventually her knocking stopped, and I heard her retreat back to our bedroom. Tears finally slipped down my cheeks, and I drifted off into a restless sleep filled with troubling dreams. I woke up at my usual time of 6:45 but decided to stay in bed longer. Normally, I would be downstairs by 7:15 for breakfast, but today I had no appetite. I stayed in the room until I heard her move downstairs, then finally got up and headed to the bathroom. When I walked into the kitchen, I saw Serena sitting at the table, not moving or looking up as I entered. I forced a cheerful tone, saying, "Good morning. Is there any coffee? I could really use a cup." As I poured myself a mug of the thick, bitter brew that had been sitting for hours, it seemed fitting for my mood. I took a sip and braced myself for whatever the day would bring. She still hadn't said a word, so I walked over to my seat across from her, clutching a morning paper and my cup of bitter coffee. I waited for Bill and Sally to arrive, keeping the surprise under wraps. As I folded my paper, ready to read, Serena glanced up at me, her eyes filled with worry. "Do you suspect me of something?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It hit me then that she had been crying. I didn't want to dive into this conversation until Bill was here, but if they didn't arrive soon, I wouldn't be able to avoid it. Just as I opened my mouth to speak, the doorbell rang. Serena looked startled, quickly wiping her face before heading to the door. When she opened it, she found Bill and Sally standing there, equally surprised. "What are you two doing here so early?" she asked, her tone laced with confusion. Bill smiled and said, "I was the one who asked them to come over last night. I figured you'd like a little surprise." I could see Sally's gaze shift to Serena, concern etched on her face. "Are you okay? You look like you've been crying," she said. "I'm fine," Serena insisted, forcing a smile as she welcomed them in. But I could tell she was on edge, and I was about to find out just how much. As they settled in, Serena approached me, her curiosity piqued. "Why did you invite Bill and Sally over? What's going on?" I remained silent and walked into the living room, greeting our guests with a cheerful voice that felt painfully out of place. Once everyone was seated, Bill and Sally on the couch, Serena perched in her favorite chair, looking frightened, I moved to my briefcase and pulled out 2 8x10 manila envelopes. I walked to the center of the room, the tension thick in the air, and faced them all. "I've given this a lot of thought," I began, my voice steady. "I have some surprises for each of you." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. I've been working long hours and traveling more than I should. It's been exhausting, but I felt responsible for everyone depending on me. The good news is, I've hired 3 new guys, and they're finally capable of handling the job without me. Serena's eyes widened. "Why didn't you say anything? I would have supported your decision," she replied, her voice almost hopeful. "I'm glad to see you both support my decision," I continued, "because I've decided it's time to retire. Just a week ago I resigned. I told myself it was time to rest." Serena frowned, confusion flickering across her face. "I wish you would have talked to me about it. I know your job has been stressing you out." Bill chimed in. "You don't owe anything to a company that doesn't value you, my friend. Let them figure it out without you." I nodded, grateful for their responses, then dropped the real bombshell. "I'm planning a trip for us to celebrate our 25th anniversary. I've booked a flight to Miami, and from there we'll go on a cruise." Serena's brow furrowed. "What do you mean, we?" I took a moment to gather my thoughts. This was it, there was no turning back now. I thought it would complicate things if you were trying to meet Bill at the hotel on Wednesday afternoons, I said, watching the realization dawn on her face. All three of them stared at me, and I knew the moment of truth had arrived. I walked over to the table and pressed play on the recorder I had set up earlier. I had compiled snippets of their conversation's evidence that couldn't be ignored. As the small speakers crackled to life, we heard the sound of Serena's voice, mingling with Bill's, and in that moment, the reality of her betrayal hung heavy in the air. The truth was out now, and there was no escaping the fallout. I hit the stop button on the tape, my heart racing as I took in the expressions of the three people in front of me. Serena looked as if I had just slapped her. Her face was pale, and her eyes were wide with disbelief. She fell back into a chair, hands covering her face, and I barely caught the soft, desperate whisper of, "Oh, please, God, no." Bill sat next to her, shock etched across his features, but it was Sally's reaction that really struck me pure, unbridled fury. Serena's sobs filled the room, and she locked eyes with me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You have to let me explain." Sally sprang up from the couch, her anger radiating like heat from a fire. "This is unbelievable," she shouted. Bill rose, but before he could say a word, Sally delivered a slap that rang through the room like a gunshot. The sound echoed in the silence, and Bill staggered back, confusion and hurt clouding his eyes. Sally wasn't done. She turned on Serena, venom lacing her words. "You've destroyed 2 marriages. And Bill, he's a terrible lover anyway." The tension in the room was palpable, and I realized I needed to intervene before things escalated further. "Bill," I said, my voice steady but firm, "get out of my house right now. I don't ever want to see you again. You were supposed to be my friend, but you stabbed me in the back." I glanced at Sally, her anger still simmering. "And you need to know something," I continued, pulling out a thick manila envelope. "I have something for you. This is a complete record of phone calls between you and Bill, graphic details that should help you if you plan to divorce him." Sally took the envelope, her expression a mix of rage and determination, before storming out of the house. Bill followed, looking bewildered and lost. I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. I hoped Sally would make his life a waking nightmare. As the door closed behind them, I turned to Serena, who was still standing there, tears streaming down her face. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. "Congratulations," I said bitterly. "You've successfully ruined 2 of our oldest friendships. I hope it was worth it." She sobbed harder, desperately trying to defend herself. "You have to let me explain. I've been so busy, and Bill was just trying to be a good friend. We got carried away, but it won't happen again. You have to forgive me, and let me make it up to you." I listened patiently, knowing exactly what to expect. "After I found out about your affair," I replied slowly, "I spent days in agony, grappling with the betrayal. I wondered what else you were capable of, whether this had happened before, and if I could really live without you. I thought about the boys. What would they think?" She cried even harder, pleading with me. "We don't have to tell the boys. I swear I've never done this with anyone else. Bill and I only met a few times in the last couple of months. You have to believe me when I say I love you and want to be with you." I could see the desperation in her eyes. "Bill was just there when you were gone," she continued, her voice rising. "He complimented me, made me feel beautiful. I was so lonely, and he was there for me." Taking a deep breath, I tried to gather my thoughts. "I understand that you felt lonely," I said, my voice steady. "But that doesn't excuse what you did. You had a choice, and you chose to betray me. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about the trust that's been shattered." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the realization dawning on her. This was no longer just a simple argument. This was a turning point. The life we had built together, the dreams we had for our future, now hung in the balance. "I need time to think," I finally said, feeling the weight of the words as they left my mouth. "I don't know if we can recover from this. You've hurt me in ways I didn't think were possible." Serena's face crumpled at my words, and for the first time, I saw the depth of her remorse. "Please, don't give up on us," she said, her voice breaking. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." But as I looked at her, I wondered if it was too late. Could love really conquer betrayal? Or had we crossed a line that could never be uncrossed? The pain was still fresh, the wound still raw, and I knew the road ahead would be long and arduous. We were at a crossroads, and every decision from here on out would shape the future we once envisioned together. I couldn't wrap my head around what she did, But the real struggle was understanding why she thought it was acceptable. If only Serena had come to me and insisted we address the problems in our marriage, I could have accepted it if she had approached me about going to counseling. But she didn't. She didn't fight for us, even when I asked her directly. Instead, she turned to another man, giving him everything she had once promised only to me. That betrayal was something I couldn't and wouldn't ever forgive. With that thought heavy in my heart, I handed her one of the 2 envelopes I had prepared. "These are the divorce papers," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I had them drawn up last week after I quit my job. You'll be taken care of, but I want this divorce to be simple and quick. If you don't contest it, I'll leave you the house and a substantial sum of money. But if you decide to fight, I'll bring everything about your affair into court, and I'll make sure you end up with nothing." As the words sunk in, Serena collapsed to her knees, her head bowed and tears streaming down her face. "Please, John, I'm so sorry. Give me a chance to make it right. Let me try," she begged, desperation coating her voice. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for what I needed to say next. "I'm leaving for what was supposed to be our anniversary trip. I've already given my attorney instructions on how to reach me and handle the divorce. I don't plan on seeing or speaking to you again. I'll call the boys and let them know how to reach me," I continued, my heart heavy. "I've written letters to each of them, explaining exactly what happened and how you betrayed me. If you fight this divorce, those letters will be sent. If you accept my terms, they'll never see them. For now, I'll tell them we've had some problems and decided to separate, hoping they won't think too poorly of me." By this point, Serena was utterly shattered, lying on the floor, sobbing with her arms covering her head. I glanced at her, but there was no feeling left inside me, only the haunting memory of her words to Bill in that hotel room. That thought fortified my resolve as I turned to leave. I could still hear her sobbing as I walked out of the house we had shared, the house where we raised our children. I had my tickets to Miami, hotel reservations, and enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life. This was my chance for a fresh start, a new beginning. I hoped that, over time, I could reclaim what I had lost, my innocence and my ability to trust. I was exhausted by the people who claimed to be my friends while betraying me behind my back. I was tired of trying to maintain a marriage that was clearly broken, especially when my wife couldn't even communicate that we had problems. She had put her own needs ahead of mine, seeking pleasure with another man for reasons only she understood. My trust in those I loved had eroded completely. Bill, someone I had cherished as a friend, had betrayed me without a second thought. I had always believed my love for Serena was unconditional, but I learned the hard way that you can't love unconditionally when the other person changes the rules. I closed the door on 25 years of my life and walked toward my car, determination in my step. As I drove away, I felt the weight of that first half of my life behind me. It hadn't all been bad, but it had ended on a heartbreaking note. Maybe this time would be different. I had no clear idea of what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I would be a different person moving forward. I had learned some hard lessons along the way. Trust was no longer something I gave freely. I had stopped taking things for granted. No more working tirelessly for someone else's benefit. From now on, it was about taking care of myself and letting others handle their own lives. As I pulled out of my driveway for the last time, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Serena rushing out of the house. She looked back at my departing car and then suddenly collapsed in the driveway. I slowed the car, watching her, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Maybe she had cared more than I thought. Perhaps she felt the weight of the pain I'd been carrying since the day I discovered her betrayal. But I couldn't dwell on that for too long. I lifted my foot from the brake and pressed down on the gas pedal. My future awaited me, and I was determined to embrace it. In the end, our divorce was finalized. It felt surreal, like closing the final chapter of a book I never wanted to read. Everyone walked away with what they deserved or didn't, depending on how you looked at it. Sally and Bill never managed to resolve their own issues, and I still kept in touch with her occasionally, mostly out of a sense of nostalgia. And that was the story of how my marriage of 25 years came to an end. I drove away, a mix of relief and heartache swirling within me, ready to face whatever came next. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel